You press your hand against the cold glass of the observation deck, watching the Earth fade into a blue speck. We are finally leaving our cradle to learn how to live in the deep dark of space, but to understand why we are. Out here, you and I need to look back to the catalyst. In 2017, the Earth encountered an anomaly. We did not know it at the time, but something ancient had slipped out of the void and visited our home. It was completely unlike anything human eyes had ever seen. Now, as our own ships depart in 2025, a second strange visitor is approaching our sun, and we can finally see it coming. Let us start at the very beginning. The first anomaly was called Oumuamua. It was the very first interstellar object we ever detected, meaning it was forged in the fires of a completely alien star. You have to imagine it drifting silently for millions of years through the exact same frozen vacuum we are sailing into right now, even with all our sensors. It caught humanity completely blind. By the time our scientists finally identified the anomaly, it had already grazed our sun and was racing back into the pitch-black void. They named it Oumuamua, honoring the Hawaiian observatory that spotted it. At first glance, you might assume it was just another rogue comet. But as astronomers looked closer, a chilling realization washed over them. It possessed no glowing tail. If it lacked the frosty tail of a comet, logic dictated it had to be an asteroid. Yet, as you learn the harsh rules of orbital survival out here, you realize this object was behaving far too erratically. To be a simple space rock, it was moving with terrifying speed. This was our first definitive proof that we were staring at an intruder from beyond. Everything inside our solar system, including the ships we now command, is shackled by the crushing gravity of the sun. The only way to break those invisible chains and escape the solar system is to accelerate to a massive escape velocity from the relative safety of Earth orbit. Breaking free requires hitting roughly 42 kilometers per second. When our terrestrial telescopes finally caught sight of Oumuamua slicing past Earth orbit, it was already tearing into the darkness at an impossible 87 kilometers per second. You do not need to be a navigator to know that is dangerously fast, way too fast to ever be captured by the sun. It was riding a chaotic, hyperbolic trajectory. What makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up is where it went beforehand. It dove so incredibly close to the sun that it actually pierced the orbit of Mercury. Out here, you quickly learn that brushing past such a monstrous gravitational titan should have dragged the object down, bleeding its momentum into the vacuum. But that did not happen. Instead of slowing down, the impossible visitor actually accelerated as it pulled away from the sun, fleeing the solar system like it was running from a threat. This chilling behavior perfectly matches its name. In the native Hawaiian language, Oumuamua translates to the first distant messenger, or simply the scout. Stick with me here because you and I are going to unpack this mystery together, and the layers of weirdness only multiply. If this anomaly was merely an inert rock, its journey should have obeyed the strict, unbreakable laws of astrophysics. Gravity demands a toll, and passing the sun should have hit the brakes, since it accelerated instead. Some internal force had to be firing. You realize what that means. For humanity, as we venture into the dark, it is physically impossible for this speeding anomaly to be a mere rock. It had to be something entirely different, something active, and the deeper you plunge into the telemetry, the stranger the reality becomes. Not only was the scout flying through the solar system in a way that shattered our understanding of physics, but its visual signature was deeply unsettling. When you try to photograph anything out in the deep void. You rely entirely on the faint sunlight bouncing off its hull. Colossal giants like Jupiter or Saturn act like massive mirrors in the dark, bouncing back immense waves of light that allow us to track them. But when you are scanning for something small like a rogue asteroid, all you're targeting, sensors usually pick up, is a pathetic, dim little smudge of gray light. Standard space rocks are incredibly dull, absorbing sunlight rather than bouncing it back, and their round shapes yield a steady, boring signature. Oumuamua shattered those expectations instantly. For one thing, the Scout flared with an intense metallic brightness. It was fiercely reflective, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that it was not constructed from simple stone. Furthermore, as the observatio and deck monitors tracked its eerie glow, the light violently pulsed. It flickered from blindingly bright to nearly invisible. Every 7 hours, that mechanical, rhythmic pulsing tells you one undeniable fact: the object cannot be a round, tumbling stone. You are looking at a structure with an extreme long side and a very short side. This harsh data forced our brightest minds into an uncomfortable corner, suggesting the visitor was shaped like a massive, jagged cigar, tumbling end over end through the endless night. Alternatively, the mathematics perfectly support a flat, razor-thin saucer spinning through the galactic medium. Of course, looking your crewmates in the eye and declaring you just tracked an interstellar flying saucer sounds like utter madness, but as you stare into the void, you have to ask the dangerous question: was it a ship? While old Earth television broadcasts might immediately scream about ancient aliens and galactic empires, out here in the quiet vacuum, we have to rely on cold, hard data to keep us alive. You and I are going to look at this telemetry together and decide. People naturally fixate on the bizarre, metallic shape of the Scout, but the aesthetics are a distraction. As a spacefarer, you know that the truly terrifying detail is that sudden, unexplainable burst of acceleration. That impossible change in velocity is the single thread keeping the artificial origin theory alive in the minds of rational engineers. Now, it is perfectly normal for a standard icy comet to gain speed as it nears the roaring fires of the sun. Those ordinary comets are essentially just ancient, battered chunks of dirty ice bleeding out from the Oumuamua cloud, the chaotic graveyard resting at the absolute edge of our star system. Think of it as the ultimate deep freezer of the cosmos, filled with leftover debris from the dawn of creation. Every so often, a frozen wanderer gets knocked inward, diving toward the inner planets. As it approaches the scorching heat of the sun, the ice violently transforms. You witness a process called sublimation, where the frozen surface bypasses melting entirely, erupting straight from a solid crust into a chaotic cloud of vapor. That violent eruption gives a comet its iconic glowing halo and that massive sweeping tail. In the absolute silence of the void, that violent eruption of escaping gas acts exactly like the chemical thrusters currently pushing our own colony ships. The searing radiation from the sun heats one specific side of the rock, blasting out high-pressure jets of vapor that physically shove the object violently, altering its trajectory and speed. But when you review the archival footage of Oumuamua, you see absolutely none of that. There was no glowing dust cloud, no trailing tail of debris, and zero evidence of microscopic outgassing. It remained a perfectly sterile, cold sliver of metal, yet it steered and accelerated, exactly like a ship firing a hidden propulsion drive. It behaved with terrifying intent. So, as you stand on the precipice of our new life among the stars, gazing into The black, you have to wonder where this ghost ship originated. Its long, dark trail points directly back to the blazing star Vega, the crown jewel of the Lyra constellation. Burning brightly in the northern sky, Vega is not just some random speck of light to humanity. It is an astronomical legend, relentlessly studied by our ancestors and often hailed as the most important star in the sky after the sun. 14,000 years ago, Vega served as Earth's sacred North Star, a steadfast beacon guiding ancient mariners. Because our home world slowly wobbles on its axis, the pole star shifts, and we will eventually transition back to Vega. Despite this mythical pedigree, our ship computers cannot guarantee the Scout was actually forged in the fires of the Vega system. It simply drifted out of that specific corridor of the galaxy. Oddly enough, that is the exact same cosmic highway our entire solar system is currently hurtling down. As much as the object plunged into our territory, humanity was also driving headlong into its path. As the Scout executed its blistering slingshot maneuver around the sun, its new trajectory aimed it directly at Earth. Out here in the black, you realize that the coincidences are beginning to stack up like a house of cards. This completely silent, metallic phantom just happened to thread the needle right past our home. Of course, when you are flying through the deep void, the concept of close is entirely relative. The anomaly missed our fragile atmosphere by 24 million kilometers. To put that into perspective, the moon is 400,000 kilometers away, making this gap roughly 50 times that lonely distance. But if you are dealing with a deeply ancient, calculating intelligence, its optical sensors could likely map our city from 100 times that distance. By the time our blind, primitive warning systems finally screamed in alarm, the Scout had already passed us by. It was already fading back into the freezing interstellar dark, robbing humanity of any real chance to intercept, scan, or truly understand its purpose. Desperate engineers back on Earth frantically drafted up suicide missions to launch a chasing probe, hoping to hunt down the retreating phantom. But as you learn on your very first day of flight training, physics is a cruel master. The Scout possessed such a staggering head start and blistering speed that our chemical rockets were utterly useless. To even get close, a human ship would have had to execute a wildly dangerous slingshot around Jupiter, dive recklessly into the blazing corona of the sun, and detonate every ounce of fuel we had just to fling ourselves out into the void. It was a beautiful, desperate dream, but the brutal reality of our fragile technology meant the chase was entirely impossible. If that silent Silver Scout had been the single, solitary, interstellar anomaly to ever cross our path, perhaps that suicidal pursuit would have been worth the staggering cost. But as humanity prepared to leave the cradle, the cosmos decided to remind us just how crowded the dark truly is. In 2019, the proximity alarms triggered a second time. Another interstellar ghost breached our borders. This new intruder was dubbed Borisov, named after the vigilant stargazer who caught it slipping past our defenses. Much like its predecessor, Borisov was riding an untouchable hyperbolic trajectory, burning way too fast for our star to ever capture. Unlike Oumuamua, it came screaming out of the Cassiopeia constellation. Unlike Oumuamua, Borisov is undoubtedly a comet. Out here, standing in the observation decks of our first orbital habitats, we have learned to spot the difference. It looks and acts exactly like the icy wanderers we grew up with in our own solar system. It is fascinating, sure, but not exactly world-shattering for those of us learning to survive the void. But here is the thing that keeps us awake at night for all of human history. We stared up from the dirt and saw 0 interstellar visitors. Then suddenly 2 arrive within 2 years. Now we are tracking a third. This is 3I Atlas, the third interstellar object ever found. It was caught by the asteroid terrestrial impact last alert. System, or Atlas, back when we still relied entirely on automated planetary grids. Atlas is our robotic sentry, a mechanical eye originally built to warn the home world about near-Earth objects. It picked up this new ghost on July 1st, sitting about 4.5 astronomical units away from the Sun. An astronomical unit is just the distance between the Sun and the blue planet we left behind, a familiar yardstick for those of us navigating the dark. So 3I Atlas is 4.5 times farther out, lurking just beyond the gas giant Jupiter, but still a long way from the red dust of Mars. The truly incredible part is that we caught this one while it is still inbound. We are clinging to the edge of the frontier, watching this ancient traveler approach our star for the very first time. And the first thing we noticed, what immediately chilled us, is the sheer terrifying scale of this thing. It is massive, and it is tearing through the vacuum at a terrifying speed, far faster than Oumuamua ever did. But the real danger is its trajectory. We met our first 2 visitors head-on, but 3I Atlas is plunging in from the side, aiming for a direct, high-speed collision course with the orbital plane. This tells us that Atlas was born in an entirely different quadrant of the galaxy, a dark and ancient region, completely unlike the cosmic neighborhood we are just starting to explore. Most folks picture the Milky Way galaxy from a top-down view, a beautiful, glowing spiral. In that picture, our old home is halfway between the blinding core and the freezing outer rim, but out here, staring into the raw abyss, the galaxy feels entirely different. Imagine looking at it from the side. You have this colossal, blinding sphere in the center, the galactic bulge wrapped in a vast flattened disk of swirling stars, rogue planets, and thick gas. The vast majority of those burning suns are crammed into the absolute center of that plane. We call this crowded, chaotic zone the thin disk. It is where our sun burns, and where humanity first opened its eyes. But drifting just above and below this bright center is a shadowy, diffuse layer of ancient stars. We call this the thick disk. The stellar nurseries up there went cold a long time ago. Everything surviving in that frozen wasteland is impossibly old. These are the ghosts of the early galaxy. Beyond that thick disk, there are isolated clusters of stars hanging in the absolute cold, but those strange realms are a mystery. For another day, I want you to understand why this matters to us right now. The trajectory data screaming across our monitors suggests 3I Atlas fell straight out of that ancient thick disk. If that is true, we are looking at an artifact from the dawn of time. We are talking about an object that could be over 7 billion years old. It has been drifting in the silent dark since before our sun even ignited. That alone makes Atlas an incredible discovery for those of us charting the unknown. But 2 more terrifying details make this encounter far more complex. The first detail is its sheer, overwhelming size. Living in fragile metal habitats, you gain a deep respect for momentum and mass, and Atlas is a monster. Our early scans suggested a diameter of 20 kilometers. As we trained our deep space optics on it, the picture sharpened. A massive cloud of glowing gas and violently shedding dust surrounds the core. It is bleeding material into the vacuum, proving it is not a dead solid rock like Oumuamua. It is an active, volatile interstellar comet. That violent halo of gas spans 20 kilometers, but the dark, frozen heart hiding inside could be 11 kilometers wide. That is 10 times larger than our first visitor, and easily 5 times the bulk of Borisov. It is an absolute titan, so the things slipping into our system are getting bigger, but the second detail is what really makes the hair stand up on the back of your neck. It is the trajectory, plunging down from the side of the orbital plane gives Atlas a terrifying path. Straight through the inner system, it is going to weave right past the worlds we are just learning to colonize. Its closest brush will be with Mars, screaming past at a distance of just 28 million kilometers. After that, it dives toward Venus, missing by 97 million kilometers. Then, as it flees back into the void, 3I Atlas will graze the crushing gravity of Jupiter at 53 million kilometers. It is practically taking a grand tour, yet it avoids Earth entirely. The world we left behind will be safely hidden on the far side of the sun while this ancient titan carves its path through our neighborhood because of that solar blind spot. The massive observatories back on Earth will lose all track of the object by October. They will be flying completely blind until December. And by the time they regain visual contact, Atlas will have already scorched past the sun and begun its long, silent escape back into the deep dark, naturally living out here. Where every shadow hides a threat, rumors start to spread. Just like with Oumuamua, whispers echo through the orbital stations. People wonder if this grand tour is too perfect, if maybe this is not a rock at all, but a deliberate reconnaissance mission. They whisper about an ancient alien probe scanning our defenses, deliberately hiding in the glare of the sun to avoid the gaze of the one planet teeming with life, but honestly standing out. Here in the freezing reality of space, that theory feels incredibly thin. Think about the energy required if some ancient civilization launched a probe across the impossible gulf of interstellar space, surviving for billions of years just to find a thriving, noisy civilization. Why would they flinch at the last second and hide? It makes no sense to travel eternity just to peek through the blinds. The real thrill for us pioneers is that we still have months to track 3I Atlas from our orbital outposts as it plummets toward the sun. As it screams toward the inner system, we are gathering mountains of data. The great unknowns of the dark are slowly yielding to hard, undeniable science, and this time, unlike our clumsy fumbling with Oumuamua, humanity actually has a fighting chance to intercept it. The gravity wells back home are too deep to launch a new ship in time, but we are no longer confined to the cradle. We have hardware already waiting in the black. We have operational vessels orbiting Mars and Jupiter right now. Our engineers are running the math, looking to push a Martian orbiter out of its safe trajectory to catch the comet. There is even a desperate, beautiful plan to fire the Juno probe out of Jupiter to meet Atlas in the deep void next spring. It is a massive risk, but the payoff would be absolute truth. For the first time, humanity could physically reach out and touch a ghost from another star system. If we had possessed this kind of orbital infrastructure when Oumuamua tore through, we would not be haunted by endless, paranoid questions today. But even if we cannot risk our deep space probes, we are not helpless. We have learned how to read the faint signatures of the cosmos. Let us assume Oumuamua was just a dead rock, not a scout ship. Comets are essentially just brutal, dirty snowballs out here. You quickly realize there is no universal law saying that snow has to be frozen water. The familiar comets from our own backyard boil off water vapor to create their glowing tails. Water vapor is violently bright when struck by solar radiation, behaving exactly like a massive cloud of steam. but space is filled with things we cannot easily see. Take nitrogen, for example. It makes up nearly 80% of the artificial air pumping through the life support systems of our habitats. You cannot see it, smell it, or taste it, but without it, our hydroponics fail and we suffocate in the dark. Now look toward the absolute frozen edge of our solar system. There is an old friend out. They're built almost entirely from this invisible element. Pluto, the planetary outcast. It's freezing, desolate. Surface is covered in mountains of nitrogen ice. That blindingly reflective frost is exactly why early astronomers thought Pluto was so huge. Through those primitive, ground-based lenses, the nitrogen frost made Pluto shine like a beacon, masking the fact that it is a tiny, frozen rock less than 2,500 kilometers across. It is actually smaller than the moon that watches over our old world. Now, I want you to picture the sheer violence of the early cosmos. Imagine a rogue planet or a rogue asteroid smashing into Pluto, shattering that nitrogen shell into billions of jagged, freezing fragments. One of those shards gets violently hurled toward the inner system. It becomes a comet plunging toward the sun, but this one is forged entirely of pure, solid nitrogen. As it crosses the invisible frost line, the brutal heat of the sun begins to sublimate that exotic ice directly into gas. But here is the terrifying trick of the light, because nitrogen gas is completely transparent and unreactive. Our sensors would not detect any brilliant coma or glowing tail. It would look like a dead rock, even as it violently bleeds atmosphere into the void. As that fractured shard dives deeper into the solar furnace, the boiling gas acts like a set of silent, invisible thrusters, randomly pushing and accelerating the rock. Then the immense gravitational whip of the sun grabs hold, violently hurling that shard out of our system forever. That chaotic, silent escape is exactly what happened with Oumuamua. Imagine that exact violence echoing across a distant star system, perhaps tearing a nitrogen world apart near the star Vega. If a dead splinter of an alien world was ejected into the great abyss, traveling for millions of years before piercing our own cosmic border, it would behave exactly the way Oumuamua did. Or, of course, you can believe the station rumors. You can choose to believe that some ancient intelligence built a tumbling, cigar-shaped ship, fired it at our sun, grazed our home world without making a single sound, and then just silently drifted away into the void. This is exactly why hunting 3I Atlas from the frontier matters so much. You and I are out here to finally carve away the terrifying unknowns of the deep dark. We are on the verge of understanding the raw, unfeeling machinery of the universe, witnessing nature operate on a terrifying scale. We are watching processes so completely unfathomable, so terrifyingly vast, that they make our entire history on that pale blue dot look like a passing shadow. But we are no longer just shadows on the dirt. We are awake, we are surviving, and we are finally looking back into the abyss with our eyes wide open. The void is harsh, and it is endlessly cold, but the answers to our greatest mysteries are drifting right through our new backyard. We are standing on the very edge of human history, and the most spectacular, terrifying moments of our journey are just over the horizon. Keep your eyes on the dark, because the story of humanity among the stars is only just beginning. Stay sharp out there.